Today I just want to explain the two tutorial exercise or worksheets I asked you guys to do to work on. One is the inverse square law and weight. Okay. The other one is ocean tides. So for the gravitational law, if you still remember, we talk about the Newton's universal gravitational law applies to any objects in the universe, any two objects in the universe. The force acting between those two objects is attractive and also depends on mass of each object as well as the distance between those two objects. So in other words, the force is proportional to the mass of each object, but inversely proportional to the distance squared. Remember, the distance has to be squared because sometimes students forget about you have to square the distance. Okay, so here this worksheet asks you to apply inverse square law for different cases. The first application is paint, the second application is light, and the third application, of course, we learned from our universal gravitational law. So again, remember, what you need to do is if you double the distance, you have to square first and do the inverse. So if you double the distance, and then that means 2 to the 2 is 4. So that's why the force becomes 1/4 of the original force. Okay. If you triple the distance, it's 3 to the 2, which is 9, and you have to inverse it with 1/9. So the force becomes 1/9 of the original force. The last question on this worksheet is pretty interesting. I want you to follow instructions and then especially pay attention to this part here. It says, do you see why it makes sense to discuss the Earth's mass but not its weight? It's because weight, unlike mass, is a relative quantity. So it's a very interesting question I wanted you guys to observe. The next page talks about ocean tides. So the first part of this exercise asking you to think about two water blobs, A and B, which are close to moon. Okay, so because the moon's gravitational force, so the moon is going to have a force on A and have a force on B, which both are attractive, but because the distance A and B away from moon is different, so that's why the magnitude of the force acting on A and B from the moon is different. Okay, because of that difference, that's why A and B actually, if you imagine there is a rubber band between A and B, so the rubber band is going to stretch. Okay, then the second part of this worksheet moves on to talk about ocean tides. So use similar ideas for you to understand why we have high tides 2 times a day. Okay. If you still have more questions, we're going to do review through the Zoom meeting. So I guess, you can have more chance to ask questions at that time.